on the radio. CFRA was pretty much it for popular music in this town.
I think we should reflect on that, the fact that this was a dead zone. FM was an absolute dead zone at the time.
There were two stations.
And AM wasn't much better. It was horrible.
Elevator music.
Speaking of the Soviet influence, do you remember? Do you remember when we had a diplomat from the embassy and his minder come up here for an interview on one of our shows? It was me.
From the Soviet embassy?
Yeah, it was one of the. We did an interview, and it was quite fascinating. They stood out in the hallway smoking cigarettes, talking Russian to one another, and then came in, and we talked about the Soviet system and whatnot. He was a pretty open guy about it.
Well, the other thing that we had that complemented this, and this was again now a foundational stone in the sort of the construction that we made at Radio Carleton, we had faculty interest, but it was usually the people who were the most overt, the most expressive, the Robin Matthews and, the people that really wanted to promote themselves, that had big egos and wanted to get their voice out
Joe
there
Scanlon,
somehow.
Robin Matthews, and I'm trying to think who over... in the music department we had.
And a guy named Richard Labonte also did a weekly show on local politics, which he then used as a sort of a springboard to his own political career, because he became the president of CUSA at one point in about 92. And then there was a guy, and I don't know if you were there with me at the time, who was really supportive of us. And I think he saw in us the energy and the inventiveness and the spirit that he had when he was starting out, and his name was Graham Spry. And Graham Spry...
We went to visit
That's
Graham.
exactly right. And he was a founding member of a thing called the Canadian Radio League.
Which became the Canadian Broadcasting League.
Which became CBC. He convinced the Bennett government. So he is known, and I looked this up on the internet, as the father of Canadian public broadcasting.
Yeah, and I'd forgotten we made that visit to him, and it was really going to the mountain.
And he was 70 years old at the time. He lived another 13 years, but he was really I think if we could go to anybody in this nation, he would be one of the guys that would be the most informed as to how radio really started in Canada. And I think, once again, that was the type of reverence we had for, but this is the type of, the spirit that we wanted to bring to this station.
And this is it. We kept attracting people to the vision that we had for trying to turn radio into something like really fulfill its full potential.
Something unique.
We thought that radio had been betrayed by current usage.
Yeah,
we thought
no question.
That it did not live up to its potential.
It had become a wasteland.
Absolutely. And we saw it as this wonderful, imaginative use of the medium, and everybody else was just making money off it, and they didn't give a shit what it sounded like. If they needed to play the song 4 times in an hour, they would.
Now, your emphasis so far has been on music.
Well,
we had whole other side.
I'm about to come to something I think you may be touching on, which is the other...
I'm not touching it. I just
right.
want to be clear now.
The other foreground programming that we did and that we got from the BBC, which included 2 episodes on a tape, a very small, like a 5-inch reel, one I think going in one direction and the other episode in the other direction. We flipped it over.
It was, if you flipped
and we
it.
paid $5 for this, and it was The Goon Show.
Yes.
And The Goon Show blew our minds. I mean, Milligan is a genius.
Peter Sellers was a genius.
And Seacombe and all those people.
Yeah, Harry Seacombe, right.
Yeah, exactly. And they were the radio... they talk about go to the Mount. We were gobsmacked at what they were doing and how they could create these images.
And for those who eventually listened to this tape, the Goon Show, those characters, influenced Monty Python.
Well, I want to.
And John Cleese was actually connected to
yes,
that
and
show.
I wanted to touch on this, and once again, another foundational.
We'll get back to CKCU in a moment.
Yeah, another foundational brick in the structure of the station is the sense of humor, and I think you talked about my laughter, but my love of and you talked about the Marx Brothers, and my love of the Marx Brothers, and then the Goons and then from there, Firesign Theater, which was acid.
Yes.
You want to do your
stand here in the sitting room, or you can sit here in the standing room.
Fireside
Everyone
Theater.
knew her as Nancy.
More sugar. Size 7.
And then from there, Cheech and Chong, which was weed, which was drugs. And what was the famous one? Knock, 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 knock.
Dave's not here.
Dave's not here.
Dave, let me in, man. Let
Child's
me
Garden
in.
of Grass.
Yeah, exactly. And then from there, George Carlin was another one. The 7 Dirty Words. I think we might have had to take that album out of the studio because we were.
No, I think it was McLean and McLean that was taken out of the studio by the Ottawa Police Department. We were raided. We were raided for our sense of humor. McLean and McLean was probably the filthiest comic act in Canada, and somebody. It was not supposed to be played on the air, but somebody played it overnight. Do you remember who? I'm trying to remember which announcer it was. Played it. Some 84-year-old nurse heard it, called the police department. Next thing I know, I'm at home in my apartment getting his phone calls in. Craig, can you come into the station? The police are here.
But that was on FM. We're talking about early. We're talking about early stuff.
Early influences.
And then the next step and the tsunami that just tore through the station and just it completely blew us away was Monty Python.
Yeah.
There was people. I think all of us can remember how we integrated Monty Python sayings into everyday speech at Radio Carleton. And it was almost a gauge, it was a bonding to begin with. And then it was almost a gauge of how hip you were. Because if you didn't get the references, we weren't going to hang around with you, So it was like the Chinese watch.
Yeah.
Mother. Stung.
Bring out your dead.
I'm not dead yet.
You're not fooling anybody.
And even to this day, there's still that type of coding that goes on. I mean, if I was in production and Greeno was doing this over elaborate production,
Jeff Green,
and we'll get to him later on, and he said, "What do you think of this?" And he said, "It's a bit runny," and we know exactly what that meant. It was like, no, it's just take it down
is
from
there any
11.
rat in it?
It's dead.
3.
So
That's rather a lot.
But now, what's interesting about all these comedians, of course, is that we picked these guys that were basically in the business of questioning power. Mm-hmm. They were making fun of power. They were slightly anarchistic. They ridiculed power. And that was sort of our attitude towards. And, of course, that bit us in the bum later on, as we'll see.
No, but I mean, that was also part of the times.
Coming out of the 60s, absolutely.
We were coming out of the tail end of the 60s.
Absolutely.
And it was about challenging the establishment and not trusting anybody over 30.
Right. And everything you know is wrong.
And everything you know is wrong, which means none of us can be trusted anymore.
Know everything.
Assume nothing.
Exactly. I remember interviewing George Carlin at the Art Center for CKCU, and he was such a nice guy.
He really was a
talked to him backstage, and he talked about his kids and how he didn't talk that way around his children, and the 7 words you don't dare speak on TV. But he was a nice man, and he had a wonderful message of not trusting authority.
Absolutely, and he continued that up until his death, I think, in his early 70s.
Right. That's a fair theme. I hadn't connected the dots in that way. That we did. Not only in the comedy we listened to, but in the music we listened to. There was a challenge to the establishment, to authority, to the way it had been. Like, push the limits, find out what else we can do here, and don't accept what they're telling us is right.
We wanted a revolution in the head.
And we wanted it now.
There is something in the air, I suspect.
Can I have more food?
So anyway, and then we progressed on to this horrible electoral system. And I was elected station manager. You were production manager.
I wasn't elected though. I was an appointed position.
And you haven't paid me enough for that.
You still owe me.
Yeah, there we are. And then a little kid called Jeff Green showed up in diapers. He's about 17 years old, as I was when I first joined the station. And he started wanting to do these plays and these audio landscapes and things of the sort. And that was fully complementary to where we were headed. And he'll resurface and we'll assume some of the blame.
Over and over. Yeah, no. He was somebody who took all of these, the way Randy was able to take some of and many of the ideas that were in the station and focus them. Jeff did it in an oral sense.
You just can't stay away from that, can you?
But it was a lush, rich, full-breasted environment.
God, it's gone off the rails. Okay. So anyway, my intention was to increase the budget, and I managed to get a budget that was about 33% higher, and we put that into some programming, and we were able to buy some more program. And also, I thought it was really important to expand the music because we were a little too raucous. So I remember I got a guy in that knew jazz, and I said, "Go nuts! Give me a list of 50 albums." And
Who was that?
James Orr.
James Orr.
James Orr, who infamously
He went to Hollywood.
He went to Hollywood, and then apparently used Farrah Fawcett's head as
nailed her head to a coffee table
in his driveway. But we won't get into that. That's just
he was
exactly.
He
was a drummer.
The editor of the Charlotte
at the time. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And
He also did a progressive jazz show.
Absolutely, that's
which
why
I teched and helped produce for him for a while. Fascinating guy. But you're right. He brought that sensibility to the station, as did a few others like James O'Regan.
Yes.
Brought that jazz sensibility to the station in a big way.
And at this point, we were given officially by the.
Are we past 1971 yet?
We are actually.
Okay, I just want to do it.
Perhaps you fell asleep during the ramblings. Yes, we're at 73, and we're at 70.
Oh shit!
Yeah, we're slowly edging our way towards. Here comes the 70s, and with a walker, apparently. Exactly. So at this point, our goal was basically to get on cable FM because the commission did not have an FM radio policy at the time.
Can I just call a time here, because we were a licensed carrier current station at this point.
In March 1973, the CRTC officially gave us a license to do carrier current, and that was low broadcast in the basement, I believe, of residence.
Yes.
So people could then listen to CKCU-FM like a legitimate radio station on AM at 670.
Plugging their radio in and picking it up off the current. Now, one of the fond memories I have of Peter is who said, "What are you doing Friday night?" And I said, "Nothing, Peter. Great, we're going to go test the signal in residence." Right. So we grabbed a radio out of the office and traveled through residence until we found good parties where we stopped. But we would go room to room. Mostly in women's residences, I could recall. Why that would be, I don't know.
Well, I think there was a bias there on your part, perhaps. However, I was thinking of that anecdote, and I realized you could not possibly do that. Show up and knock on a woman's door
today?
Now.
Oh, God,
and
no.
say, "Could we come in and test your radio?"
We just want to fool with your dials, that's all.
Can we tune in Tokyo?
And so that would just not be allowed. We might have actually broken in one of the residences, slipped in behind somebody.
It wouldn't be the first thing we broke into around this campus,
First,
or broke out of. But yeah, no, I just wanted to mark that particular point because we were under we were officially licensed by the CRTC, which did give us, I think it gave us a different perspective on, we weren't just a bunch of cowboys here. We did have to start to understand the broadcasting environment, which was shifting. AM was, or FM rather, was coming in. AM was, as we talked about, a wasteland stagnant. FM was creating opportunities, not only in two channels, but when was the FM policy?
Well, you just brought me to that. I will read from the FM policy book, as a matter of fact. Not at length, but...
Thank you.
But as I said, we were more interested in getting on cable, and then this commission came out with this, "We want to hear from you, your thoughts on revitalizing the FM band." And they put out this document called "A Policy to Ensure a Varied and Comprehensive Radio Service, FM Radio in Canada." And it was
Randy is plummeting into depression.
And
at
no,
this
no,
point.
no, 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 no. This was
This is important,
No,
yes.
this is the document that we were happy with.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to other documents that came at us from the CRTC.
Later,
'Cause
yes.
This was a document that we thought, did we write this?